This is the third video diary of my first attempts using the EP-1320 as a total novice and as someone new to teenage engineering products. Here I attempt to sequence a beat from scratch based on section 7.2 of the EP-1320 user manual. In part 1 I tried to understand what all the buttons, knobs, pads and sliders are used for, as well as translating the Latin and pseudo-Latin names. In part 2 I went through the workflow and interpreted section 7.1 of the manual to make a beat from scratch. I was curious to see if I could build on my experience using my Poly-N tracker to get the EP-1320 to program a basic medieval tune. The obvious choice was the Cantagasta Santa Maria No. 100, which dates back to the 13th century and which is relatively simple and can be played with an instrument in C. The 12 pads on the EP-1320 can be used to play individual samples or switched to play the 12 notes in a chromatic scale of any single sample, so here I have assumed that the lowest note on the 12 pads is C. As with my attempts to make a beat from scratch in part 2, I found the instructions a bit confusing because settings were described after you started playing the samples. Either way, here's a quick reminder of the workflow, structure and any settings you might want to define before starting. The basic building block is a sample, note or sound, and when you put these into a sequence you get a pattern. Save using the committo function and you can create another pattern and stack it on the first to make a scene. Repeat this process at will and then string together a collection of your scenes to make a project, which is effectively a song. Creating a song using the sequence approach is more granular than the method I described in part 2 because you create your pattern by recording each sample or note step by step as you progress through each bar of the music that you program. To load a new empty project, simply hold down Manus and a pad, bearing in mind that projects 1 to 5 are populated with sounds by default. I created a project in slot number 8 which had no sounds allocated to the pads. To load a small selection of samples in groups A, B and C is straightforward. Press Sonus and then a group and then a pad and use the plus and minus to scroll through until you get to a sample you want, then choose another pad and repeat to add a second sample, and then just repeat this process until you have all the samples that you need. To keep it simple, I added a few drum samples to group A, my favourite Plague drums for bass in group B and some instrument samples in group C. Pressing Manus takes you out of the sample selection and pad allocation mode. Because I just wanted to record the first 4 bars of the Canticus as my first pattern, I changed the pattern length in group C from the default of 1 bar to 5 bars by holding down codecs and pressing the plus button as I wanted a short 1 bar intro. The screen then shows 3 numbers which report the bar, the beat and the step you are on in the bar. By default each bar contains 4 beats and 16 note intervals so that each step is 1/16 of a bar. You can change the number of intervals in a bar if you press Quantum and rotate the red X knob, which I did to get 8 steps per bar. Next job was to reduce the BPM from a default of 120 to 70 beats per minute by pressing Tempus and using the plus and minus buttons. Interestingly, the teenage engineering instructions only describe using the sequencer option for the drums and then suggest playing the bass line and melody in real time over the top by pressing the codecs and fabula buttons and using the 4-beat counting as described in part 2. However, I chose to sequence everything. I decided to record the melody first by pressing Manus again and selecting group C. I selected a sample and pressed claves to change to the notes mode. Recording a step is simple, hold codecs and press the pad you want. You then navigate to the next step you want to populate using the plus and minus buttons and repeat the codecs hold and pad button press process. I decided to commit and save my melody as a separate scene before sequencing some drums from Group A by pressing Altero and Manus. I repeated the process for the plague drums in Group B and saved the final scene by pressing Altero and Manus again. Next, I sampled my voice in Group D, which was empty, by first selecting Group D and holding Altero and Demus until the pads flashed. Holding down a pad and talking recorded the sample, and pressing Manus meant I could then use the sample in the ongoing audio compilation as before. Pressing Pocus opens the effects function, and by pushing the fader up and using plus and minus, you can switch between effects for each sample selected. As before, pressing Altero and Manus commits the new combination of patterns to a new scene. You can apparently change the swing by pressing Quantum and turning the brown knob Y, but I didn't notice much difference. It's all good.